Hello there, good evening. In this video, we're going to be talking about some decorative cut tips to help bring these flowers to life here. Just a few simple tricks that when you execute them and pull them off can really make a huge difference. I'm working with the single flower here that we have pulled out of the leather tooling pattern book, and we're going to get right going. Now, one of these you can see I've actually tooled up, beveled out with some shading in there, but I wanted to just cut some other ones in here to talk about when we start laying some of these decorative cuts in, what we can do to bring those petals to life. So just a couple quick things when I talk about decorative cuts in general. A few things that are going to make a big difference. One, on your cuts, we want to start them deep. So I'm pushing down, starting that deep, and then I want that fade that cut out lightly. Okay, you can see where that just fades out to nothing there. And doesn't matter which direction you go with those, we want to make sure that we start them deep and fade them light. The other thing is you'll notice, even when I'm sitting here practicing and just making a few cuts, that these are all have a curve to them. Okay, I'm not just simply putting straight cuts in there. So the idea behind our cuts is to help create flow within your flowers, right? So I don't want to come in here and just put some cuts in like that, right? That doesn't do as good. So a few of the mistakes I see, one is making straight cuts like that. We don't want to do that. We want to have some curve to them. So in comparison, just making a little bit of curve, watch this, when we curve that around, see how much difference those two make, there to there. Now we're going to keep talking about a few different differences, and I'll lay them out as we go here. But we definitely want curve in our cuts, not just straight lines. Next thing is where that cut pulls to. Now I have stamped a center in all of these just to show you here, because if, okay, we want to pull that curve in there, well now we start deep, fade to light, pull curve in there, follow in the curve of that flower, and I'll just curve that in there, curve these. Well, that doesn't do us any good, right? Because it's not going to that center, so it doesn't actually create any flow. But instead, if we'll get that curve and fade it towards our center, now we've started to create a little more flow. So you see the difference that makes when you go and pull your cuts down to the center rather than not to the center. Both of these ones are off center, so it's not actually helping anything. Cover those up, we're starting to create a little more flow. Those, not so much, right? Okay, the next thing is where I'm utilizing some of the space in there too. We don't have to come in the center there, right? I can split that out to the edges. So we can stack a couple in on that outside, and even if I switch directions and put a little swoop in there, I can do that and still utilize some of that center open area, but we're pulling back towards that center, stacking them in there, and fading them from deep to light. That's still a pretty decent look in there, right? And we can actually utilize some of that open space to help create some more dimension in that petal. Now, these are all identical flowers, right? So here we just did some good and bad, right? I want to show you some different things to do. Well, now here, let's look at a couple different things we can do to add a completely different look, maybe, still following some of the same rules to it. So we're going to start our cuts deep, fade them to light, and pull them towards that center. But I can roll like we did on that one, and we'll just stack them on those outsides and leave our center open. We can do that. I can make one big cut that goes all the way stack those in, still following those same principles. Now, what if we wanted to tip something the other way? So now by shooting that one out that way, kind of almost fans that petal out a little bit more. So look at the difference between this petal versus the same one on that other flower. Two entirely different ways of doing it. And we can even add to that a little bit if we wanted to. Same thing, stacking some smaller ones in there. Now here's another thing that I'm doing too, is starting to create depth of that flower coming out. Now these ones were all pretty long and not straight lines, but long, and they went in there all the way. And again, starting small is a good thing if you're kind of new to running your knife. Sometimes less is more. You know, we can throw just a few cuts in there and call it good. But now I want to show you another thing about how we can kind of utilize some of the smaller cuts pulling down towards that center, but if I'm starting deep on that outside edge, but then really fade off. Stack some of them in there. Really light. Do the same thing over here, starting deep out there. Stacking them in light. We're going to actually start pulling that center up and bringing that dimension in there. And this has no shading and no beveling, right? So by fading those off and making them real small and fading down towards that center, you can kind of really pull that up and open that up there. See how that's starting to, it actually puts that center and drops it down in there. Okay, so that's just another trick that we can do. Again, just watching how much you're fading those cuts, starting the deeper you start out on that end, and the lighter you fade them towards that center, and the smaller they get down in there, that's what's going to really bring that definition down into there. So all those little tips. Now let's roll it on to one that actually already has the shading done. Beveled, shaded, flower centers in there. Again, same exact flower that we have here on the edge. It's that same. If you pull out, if you're in their book there on the single page where I have some of the single fillers, this flower right here is the one we're working with. It's right on the outside of that page. And if you, doesn't matter what you substitute that in, you can give it a different look depending on these cuts, right? So now let's give this one a final look to it. Starting those cuts deep, fading them off in there. Always pulling down towards that center. Now I'm really utilizing that open space in the middle on this particular one. Decorative cuts can be really fun to play with because they don't always have to be the same. You can switch it up, try some different things, and it always adds a little extra flair to your tooling. So anyways, I hope these tips can help you. I hope that as you go on with your tooling, you find some of this stuff that you can fit in to your own patterns, and some different things that you're doing, whether it's your flowers or leaves or just in your vine work, or just some decorative cuts on some of the liners of your projects. But feel free to check out the website for a swivel knife practice guide that I have up there. It's just a free download sheet, or if you're interested in the book, that's on there as well. But follow along, practice. It just takes time. Good leather and a good knife makes a big difference. What we're tooling with tonight, this is Herman oak leather. This is a piece of 8-9 ounce as far as thickness goes, and this is my leather wrangler's knife. It's a 3/8 barrel with a 1/4 inch blade on it. So hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to share this out if you find value in what we're doing, and follow along with all the other videos. Thanks a lot. Take care.